All right, friends, welcome to week 6, lecture 3. We just in office hour finished up our project, right? And we talked about this in class. So if you are just joining for class and you're like, oh, what the heck? Why did that project get finished? Don't worry, we recorded it. That'll be uploaded in our office hour. We took a poll in class yesterday where people wanted us to do deployment before we do, or instead of sort of finishing it. So what we decided yesterday was that we would finish it in office hour, which we did. The code will be up available for you, and the actual project itself will be available for you as well. Or sorry, the code will be there, and then the recording will be available for you as well. So we're just going to focus on today. Might be a shorter class. It really just the whole point is that we can answer any questions, and then at the end I'll deploy this project and we'll get it up and running, so that way we can see and walk through deployment and how we can do that. So great. Just so you know, this is what we've done. We have this little navigation where we can go. Here's our home. Here's what we called home. We can create a player. We can go back home. We can click on our player and it brings up their status information. We can go right here to edit them. It already pre-populates the information that they have. We can delete them and we can create a player too. So really cool, really fun. Yeah. Really fun project. Again, we sort of shifted a little bit because we were kind of going down a path that I thought was a little bit too complicated for what the exam really is going to be, what the exam is going to look like. And so I wanted to make sure that we shifted. Again, here was our goal. Let me bring up our goal. And we were able to accomplish that, right? Where we had, if you see something like this, where it's like blue and every other, you can try to do that. If you have time with CSS, that's fine. And it's not super hard with Bootstrap to make it every other row has a certain color. But I mean, it's really going to be as basic as this. There is not like, if I get a project that looks like this, if you want to add in some coloring, that is awesome. Yeah, if you want to add in some color, that's great. If you want to add in some, borders around your table, you can do that. That's fine. But as long as it looks basically like what I ask, or basically like what it needs, then, or sorry, what it looks like, then this is totally fine. Like if you were to give me this project, this would be just fine because it looked like, cool, you have a form. Everything's good to go. Maybe you could have added in a little bit of space. My encouragement and what I want to talk about is don't spend too much time on your CSS. That's a little minor portion of your grade. And again, I'm pretty liberal when it comes to CSS and the fact of I care more about if you know how to do the functionality, right? If your controllers and your models are all set up, if you're able to do some of the more challenging things, then that's what I care about. If you can handle these routes, if you have a back end, if you have a front end, if they're communicating and getting the correct data. Like if we were to create a player and I say, I don't know, Mbappe, BAPPE, and then I say forward, does that information automatically come up, right? If I click it and delete, does it delete it? And then I have to refresh and then it leaves this, or is our list updated anytime we delete it? That's the stuff that I'm looking for, not actually, what does it look visibly like? Obviously try, like, don't just put it together if it's all gross. Like I would change this, right? That's not a hard thing. We just ran out of time, but I would change this and change your, I would say like list style, nothing, right? Or I think it's text decoration is none. And so that's what I would do just to get rid of this guy, like do little things like that, but it shouldn't take you, don't worry about it for the actual exam in the sense of don't spend all your time doing CSS, right? If you get something with color, don't try to really mimic that, but don't miss out on the functionality. The functionality is the main part of the grade. There's only one portion. I look at the CSS and say, does it match up to 75% of what I asked? That's literally the criteria. And I'm pretty liberal. So making sure that you guys are doing the functionality, that's what matters. And if you like front end stuff, then you can go make it better after. But if especially if you're trying for a black belt or a red belt, I would worry just about your functionality. Just want to talk a little bit about your belt exam. I don't have a slide, sorry. I wish I did. but what to expect. There is so just to kind of lay out a couple things. A couple of you guys emailed me and said that maybe my calculations were incorrect for the assignment. I'll check that today, so don't worry, and I'll check it tomorrow. So if you believe that there is a discrepancy, then I'll be in contact with you, and Gray and I will look into that. We'll make sure that you are taken care of. Just as a reminder, you do have to have 90% of your assignments done by tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Again, if you've already emailed me, then I'll just communicate with you. Don't worry about it. But if you don't have it done by 9 a.m., but you're aiming to get it done by noon, and this is all PST, by the way, but if you're able to get it done by noon, if you're able to get it done by, whatever, then just make sure you email me, because I'm not going to keep checking. So please make sure that you email me and let me know and say, hey, I've just submitted my 10th assignment. I'll go in, I'll check, and then I'll give you your belt exam code from there. A couple of things about the belt exam. If you can do this, you 1,000,000% can do the belt exam. There might be, especially for a red belt. Now, for a black belt, there's a couple things that might be a little bit different. Things such as how can you handle data and manipulate it from the back end, maybe on a query. Depends on, that's going to be kind of ambiguous there, but how would you do that, right? Can you chain a method onto just our .find, or, kind of able to manipulate whenever we retrieve data? Maybe we want to retrieve it in a specific way. How could we do that? Those are things that are going to be your black belt. I just want to, as a reminder, there is no login and registration on this exam, not even for black belt. So don't worry about it. Get it out of there. You don't need to do login and registration. It is not a thing. So don't worry about login and registration. For the black belt, if you do decide to do that, the requirements are you have to do it within 5 hours. That is not including your deployment. Your deployment counts, you have 24 hours after submission to deploy your project. And so the way it'll work is whenever you submit it, I get a timestamp, or there's a timestamp on your submission. And then what you'll have to do is you'll go through the process. And then from there, you will, once it is deployed, you need to email me specifically and let me know the IP address. So once we deploy it, which we'll see today, we'll get an IP address. That way we can, we'll get an IP address. And then you email that to me. When you email it, I'm going to take that timestamp and I'm going to compare it to the timestamp of when you submitted your assignment. And as long as it's within 24 hours and when it's deployed, it works, obviously, then you're good to go, right? So you have up to 24 hours post submission. So if you take it tomorrow night and you do the exam and you're like drained, you don't have to then go and deploy. It might be good. It might be, depends on how you want to operate and how you want to work. If you want to wait till Saturday to deploy it, that's fine. Just make sure it's done within 24 hours. The red belt and the black belt they are needed to be done within 24 hours, within 5 hours. If you go past 5 hours, that's totally okay. That'll just be an orange belt, which is still a great, great, great success. So if you find yourself 6-7 hours in, don't be depressed or don't be sad. You can still get an orange belt. And just what my encouragement would be is if you're going for a red belt or a black belt and you don't get it, still at least get an orange belt, because that's passing. And then you can work on, if you wanted to come back and try to get for black belt, you totally can. I can get you a new exam, but at least still try to finish one out. Don't just kind of give up and be like, oh, I'll just take another one for that. I will be sending an email tomorrow that outlines all of the information, right? There's not necessarily a rubric because you'll get it once you open the exam. But again, it is very, very, very similar to this. You can create, edit, delete, show one. I just did a couple different bonuses that aren't there, but make sure you have your back-end validations for sure. Front-end validations if you can. But I don't believe that's a requirement. But if you can do this, you are good to go. Make sure your routes are similar to what is on the exam. So don't just kind of go off kilter and name everything unicorn or cupcake, right? You want to be as succinct and aligned with the exam prompt as you can. A couple tips and tricks I would say for the exam is you will be able to download the wireframe I would do that immediately. You can still keep the login open, but sometimes things get weird. Platforms, refresh or tokens, maybe you've got like a JWT that expires every 60 days and the day you take the exam is the 60th day, right? And all of a sudden you need to refresh and then it goes away and you can't see it. So make sure immediately once you open the exam, there's going to be at the very bottom, basically a hyperlink that allows you to download it. Make sure you just download it, put it on your desktop or wherever you want to hold it. And then you can keep it open and keep going through, but that'll have all the wireframe plus all of the requirements as well. So that's my one big encouragement. My second encouragement is to make sure that if there is any sort of error, right? Error uploading, things don't make sense. Please make sure that I'll write all of this in an email. Make sure you email me immediately. Let me know, hey, there's an error, and take a screenshot of that. If you don't take a screenshot, I can't do anything for you because unfortunately, I can't confirm that there actually was an error, and so if you didn't make it in time, but you're like, oh, there was an error, I don't know that. So please make sure you take a screenshot of whatever the error is. Some of the errors that I typically see with students is do not forget to do two things. Make sure you do a get init, like it talks about this in the platform. So I'm just going to bring that up. Give me 1 second. Make sure you do a get init at the very beginning before you even start your exam. I believe it's in full stack.
But then make sure to make it private.
Yes. Well, that's for your GitHub, right? Your get init is initializing Git on your computer. But yeah, so you want to, I think it's, right here. You want to first, before you do anything, before you even, please, I promise, because this is the error that everybody gets, so don't do this, is before you do your NPM create React app, please do this, because what this does is it adds this hidden file. We've talked about it a couple times in office hours. It adds this hidden file that then when we initialize our React app, it looks at that parent, right? Our main folder and says, okay, this Git is already there. If you try to do this after you've already created your client, then you're going to have nested repositories and it's a whole big pain. So in order for you to not do that, I would encourage you guys even today, before the exam even starts, is to create your belt project. Just literally call it belt exam. And then before you do anything, navigate into it and do get init. That will be the biggest thing for you. And then if you want to, you can come with a client and server. So if you want to modularize it, obviously you're not going to know the prompt. So you're not going to know what your model looks like, your routes or anything like that. But if you want to go ahead and have all of your folders, if you want to handle the basic things, right? Like browser router, that you're going to have that no matter what. You're going to have routes and route. You can come with all that sort of prepared. What I wouldn't do is do not take, like if you followed along with me for this, do not just take this and try to make it the belt exam. I see students do that all the time. And that gets very confusing because you left it one place, you called it player, and the other place you called it pizza, right? And then it's like, oh, I know that you don't actually know what you're doing. You're just copying and trying to figure it out, right? So do not do that would be my encouragement. But if you do want to come with just a basic server that has your 4 folders plus your server.js, obviously you can set up your server.js. You can set up in your Compass. You can set up your belt DB. You don't know what it's going to be in there because you don't know your model, but you can set that up. You can create your connection string. You come with all that prepared. My encouragement is that takes less time off of how long it actually takes for you to do it. But then B, it also takes away some of the stress, right? Because you already have done sort of this tedious work. So, but again, please make sure you come with a file initialized with a get init before you do that. Then the other thing to make sure, the second thing that is always a common error, is you forgot to do node modules. So make sure you do your get ignores, because there's 2 ways to submit this exam. You can either submit it you can either submit it as a zip file, or you can try to host it and deploy it. If you deploy it, you're going to put it on GitHub. Please make sure the repository is private and invite me. I will send over my GitHub name tomorrow. So make sure that you can do that. But you can invite me and keep and have it in the repository. If you do it in the zip where I always find the errors, people will say, oh, my zip is not working. I can't, it's too big. If it's too big, that means your node modules are in there. It means you forgot your git ignore. So what I would do is go in, get your exam all set up, and then make sure you have your git ignore. Everything is up and running, because while an exam's going on, you kind of stress and you get really, really, really frustrated or crazy. And yeah, so please make sure everything comes initialized before, make sure you have a git ignore, and then you should be good to go. You'll just add me as a collaborator. I'll walk through how to do that. I'll walk through how to do that today when we are deploying our project. I can do that. Yeah. Cool. Any questions about the exam? I think that's all I have.
Can we still do code reviews at the end of them?
Yeah, I would say, I will reach out to you if I am grading, and also does help if you let me know, if you shoot me an email that you're done with the exam, I can actually go in and grade, like if I'm working this weekend, or if I know I said I don't work weekends, but if there's a lot of exams, then I might grade a little bit while I'm watching March Madness. But if you shoot me an email, let me know that you have done it and it's complete, then that just kind of lets me know, okay. And it keeps me, there. And also, again, if there's any sort of weird thing that maybe it doesn't look like you're in, but on my end, I don't see that you've uploaded anything. What a good sort of strategy to do is just, even if you push it to GitHub, create a zip of that file and just email it to me. Right. That just is another way that, I guess, if it's deployed, then that's one thing. But if you try to zip it up, or if you zip it up and put it on the platform, also just send me an email with that folder, because that's a backup, right? If I'm like, hey, I don't see, and I've had that happen to students where they have emailed me and I've received it, received the zip, but then when I go and look on the platform, it's non-existent. And so they're like, oh my gosh, I did it, but at least I was able to have that timestamp. It's like, okay, that's fine. I can still accept this because you did that. So that's a good practice as well. If you do fail, that's okay. It is not a big deal. It's not an indication. You get 3 chances. So what I will ask is, if it is super, like super tough, then I would say, let's probably meet up. And if there's quite a bit of a disconnect, then let's meet up and make sure that we know what we're doing. And we know that we can, we can get things moving right. If it's little pieces, I might just write an email that says, hey, don't forget you can do this. If you'd like to meet, we can meet. But just as a reminder, I have 60 students and grades out a little bit next week. So if I will try to make some time, and I will be emailing you guys and let you know, like, hey, I'd like to meet. And if not, if I don't email you that, then that means I think you're fine, or I think I can give you a little bit of guidance, but you should be okay. And then if I'm unavailable, then a TA can help you with that walkthrough. What I would say though, is if you have a good understanding and there's just 1 or 2 things, again, that I lay out, try to figure those out without doing a full code review. Just as a reminder, all stacks are on the same time schedule. So everybody's doing exams this week. So TAs might be quite busy. So if you're just ignoring or relying on that, not that they're not going to be available, not that they're not going to help you, but it might just be quicker. So try to do that. But I'll let you know specifically if I say, hey, I think it'd be good to meet. Then I will try to set up a time, and instead of Calendly, I'll just say what time works for you, and I'll see if my calendar allows that. So great question, Robert. Anybody have anything else? Tin, yeah, your Mongo connection string of localhost 27017 is different than your server localhost 8000. So yep, as normal, mine is the same way. That's the connection string for MongoDB. So just so you know, the MongoDB in your connection string will have the localhost 017, but when we are running our server, we're going to do localhost 8000.
Oh, okay, I see that. I see that.
Yeah.
Because when it just update, I confuse like so I know it's just is it okay to work with 8,000. So I see that.
Yep, you'll be good. Just in your connection string. So like right. So if you look at mine, even if I go to my config, I have it as that's the 127.0.0.1 is the same thing as localhost. So
Oh,
mine's
okay.
the same thing.
Oh,
So we'll
okay.
have your
I see
DB
it.
here, but when I still run it, I'm still running it in 8000.
5,000. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, because if I look here, my port for my actual server is 8000.
yeah. I have another issue with, but I know it's in the lesson now, so I wait until after class so you can help
Okay.
me on.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fun. I do want to get going. Does anybody have anything specific on the belt exam itself? Any
Oh,
questions?
yeah.
ahead.
One more thing. So when we working on the exam, and then you figure out that you have issue because maybe you don't know like when you download the program, or you install thing is missing some file. How so? Is it okay? We go and go Dojo Hall and see the TA or no?
No, you'll want to make sure that everything is up and running. That's why I would say you could, make sure if you can do this, or if you've been following along, you want to make sure everything's up and running before, because once that exam is open, you can have very limited communication. That's a great thing for thanks for bringing that up. Very limited communication with anybody on the outside. Obviously, it's open universe, meaning that you can use Google, you can use anything you want. Just as a reminder, I do go through your code. So it's not like I just, up and look at it and then you're good to go. I do go through your code. So if there is some really complicated code that looks like maybe, Chat GPT 4 wrote it, or, you just found it on Stack Overflow, I might ask you like, hey, will you explain this to me? Just as a reminder, it is against the rules to use somebody else's code that is not yours. Now, obviously, I understand when we're problem solving, if somebody has a answer to our problem and we plug it in, it works. You're like, I don't know why it works, but it works. My encouragement would be to then understand, try to figure out why that works. Because if I ask you, unfortunately, and say, what is this? Because I know that this isn't anything I've taught, and based off of your other code, this doesn't really match. If you have some really complicated formula, really complicated function, then that is an infringement on the academic policy. So that's just a reminder. You also can't ask anything in Discord. That is not allowed. You cannot work with anybody. It should just be yourself. You can use Google, you can use other tools. You just can't get physical help from somebody else. If there is like, I guess I will say, if there is something that's fully out of your hands, like, I don't know, something wild that isn't like, how do I do this on the belt exam? But it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know why this is blown up. You can ask, and a TA might, TAs will either say, yeah, I can, or I can't answer that based on your question. But yeah, I would say to try to understand that you can't do anything on your own here, or you have to do everything on your own. You can't get any help again, unless it's something sort of minute or sort of a larger issue, not really just how to do this belt exam, but something really weird is happening, then they can maybe help you. But it doesn't hurt to ask. But they will know that you're in exams because we can sort of see everybody who's currently has an exam open, and they'll test it and say, do you have an exam open? They'll look you up. And then if you do, then they will likely say, hey, can't really do anything for you here.
Okay, I see that. Because sometimes I know that like when we download, like MongoDB or something, I know sometimes I got issue like they missing some file, and then had to like delete that one and re-download again.
Sure.
So
Yeah, if it's
sometimes
something like that, if it's something like that, they can help you. You should have everything downloaded that you need. Yeah, you should have everything you need here.
Yeah, well, you should have everything, like everything that we've done this far, like Node, you should be fine with, Mongo, you should be fine with. You shouldn't be downloading anything. Everyone really should be like ready for the exam if you're taking the exam. So some folks don't have to take the exam because they're 3 stackers or whatever, or maybe they just, maybe a different reason they're going to retake, I don't know. So, but everything should be working for you. If it's not, you see me or Will, a TA, set up time. Will has time. Please don't wait till the last minute because we can't help you last minute. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay, that.
have
Thank
time
you.
now. No
Yeah.
problem.
Thank
Alan
you.
asked a really great question. Is that just the exam including deployment? Yeah. So because deployment's a black belt thing, and that's obviously not a black belt really is, can you do above and beyond? The whole point of a black belt is, can you do some stuff that maybe I didn't teach or we touched on for a little bit and you can expand it? That's the whole point of a black belt. It's not like it's supposed to be above and beyond. And so if you run into an issue with deployment, I can't help you. Nobody can help you. If you get past that 24 hours and you want to jump into something, then that's fine. Somebody can help you. A TA can help you. I can help you. But if you, looks like other instructors are saying the same thing. No, my opinion, if you're doing a black belt, that is supposed to be above and beyond. And so therefore you should be on your own. Plus the fact is that I am about to do a deployment. And so we're going to have a video of it on how to do it. So if you really just follow the video, you should be able to do it. So yeah, just like Katie said, give yourself plenty of time to deploy. If you haven't already, I would go make an AWS account right now. They've gotten much better at this, but it used to be that if you created an AWS account, it could take up to 24 hours to work. One thing to note is, or there's 2 things to note. You will have to put a credit card down. But the way that we deploy is free. We use something called a T2 micro. It's just a free EC2 instance, which is Elastic Cloud Computing. We'll look at that here in a second. So it is free. It shouldn't charge you. 2 things though. It's free for what we need. Like if I'm making a request to go to your IP address and to go do your, like see your exam, that's fine. If you accidentally leave it up for months and let's say somebody finds your website and just hammers your website, it can end up costing you. So once if you have it up for a week, it's not going to be a big deal. But once I give you your belt exam grade back, then what I would do is I would immediately go in and stop your instance to prevent any sort of payment. So again, deployment should be free. If this is your first stack and you're trying to deploy, please make sure you go create an AWS account right now. At least give it 24 hours. Again, AWS has gotten much better at when you create an account, you can go put up an EC2 instance and everything is good. And yeah, Christopher has a really great idea too, is try to deploy a previous assignment and get help with it before the exam. So please try to do that as well.
Also,
Go ahead.
oh, was that Katie? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, I deployed last time in Python and it took me 3 tries. So if you don't do it the same day as your exam, make sure you still give yourself plenty of time to do it the following day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just one note, some folks are not ready for black belt. If you are behind or if you are struggling, do not do black belt. Your first try should be to pass. And if you want to go for black belt afterwards, then go for black belt afterwards. But if you're trying to catch up or you've been struggling, whatever the case may be, your first attempt should be to pass with an orange belt and or a red belt, which is okay. Because remember, in order to go for a black belt, all your code has to work. If you give Will and I broken code, we'll say fail. So make sure that, hey, do I know how to do my CRUD? Do I know how to put it in my back end? Does my front end work? Am I constantly testing out my code? Make sure you're doing all those things first, because again, black belt is a whole nother new level. So again, it's okay to go for an orange belt for right now or the red belt for right now. If you're ready for black belt, go for black belt. But again, you have 3 tries, 3 attempts to do so. So don't stress yourself out. Well, like, I gotta go for the black belt. right now when you're still trying to understand CRUD and how to connect the back end to the front end. Give yourself some space to study, to brush up on a few concepts, like, put some grace on yourself. So
Yeah.
just kind of put
And-
that there,
Yeah.
pass first, and then black
And-
belt features later.
Yeah, and what I would say to that too, that's a great point, Gray, is even if you have black belt functionality that doesn't offset, if you can't do red or orange. So I have seen it before where I've had students who didn't pass a red belt, but added black belt functionality. And they still didn't get anything, right? Because the black belt is everything up to the red and including everything to the red belt, meaning or slash orange, because they're the same things, just time. Plus it's 2 additional features plus deployment for black belt. So we'll give you like 4 or 5. You should get a pick from 2, and then plus deployment. So don't do 2 or 3 of those and think, oh, well, if I don't do this on the red belt or black or orange belt, this will take sense. Nope. It's everything must be on the red belt, or slash orange belt, then you go into your black belt. So that's a great point.
Mhm.
But okay, cool. I do want to get, I told you guys I would do deployment. We have 27 minutes. Let's see if we can do this. Yeah, thanks, Alan. Alan's already taken the exam. We'll retake exams, have login and registration. Depends on which exam I pick. Some of them do have it as a black belt feature. None of them will be a red or orange belt. So if you have to retake, then it can be a black belt feature. It just depends on whichever one we pick. But for this first one, it's not. So yeah, cool. Okay. Any other quick questions? Obviously this takes precedence over deployment, but just want to see, is there any other quick questions? Okay, doke. Well, let's go try to send it and just deploy. Okay. So let's do a couple things. I'm going to bring up AWS. I'm going to bring it up over here. Sorry. Not that I don't trust y'all, but sign into my console. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Should have had this open running. Again, go ahead and create your AWS account if you already haven't. I'm bringing up my password manager. Sorry, it's super slow. I don't remember my password. Should never use the same password for everything. But then this is the issue is because I don't know any of my passwords by heart. NordPass ever gets hacked or goes down, I'm done, dude. All my stuff's there. Okay. Look it up.
Hello folks, welcome to our channel. In today's video, we are going to
Sorry, I was watching a video. Okay. Cool. So whenever you sign up for an account, I've got here just like one I use for coding, just for fun. Also really just to kind of get this up and running. Here's our AWS platform, right? Here's what it's going to look like. You might not see these recently visited. If you click services, you can see all the different things that you can do. All the different stuff that Amazon AWS has. All you're going to have to focus on is this EC2, this virtual servers in the cloud. One thing I do want to note though, is when you are deploying, we lay out a step-by-step process for how to deploy. This is crucial that you do not read this and move forward and just do this, because this might say something you need to do before you do this. So again, please make sure that you do not jump ahead. That is where students always get in trouble, is when they jump ahead. They think, oh, code, let me put that in. And it says something like, hey, don't forget to click this and then do this. And you're like, oh no. And then it gets really confusing and you've never dealt with the cloud. And then now you're stressed. So go as slow as you can. We're going to try to do it in 23 minutes. Might take 30. I don't think it will, but we're going to try to do it. This is everything we have to do So it's quite long, but we'll be okay. We're going to try to figure it out. Cool. So it says, before we get started, we need to push our code to GitHub, change directory into your project that contains your client and your service folders. Cool. Inside this project name folder, we'll be making a file called gitignore. Now we've done that, but we can still follow this. So I'm going to go to this guy. I'm going to go to CD to belt exam or belt prep is what we called it. Cool. Gitignore file tells us which files to commit. As contents of node are rather large, we can re-download this. Let's run this guy. So what this is doing is this echo is creating a gitignore with node modules in it. So, oops, let's do this. So I'm gonna come here. I'm within my project. And this guy. Cool. I don't see anything, but that's okay. That's probably because I have a gitignore in there. Great. This command will create a file called gitignore and make its contents node modules. Perfect. In any file editor, open this up. So if I come here, let's see if it worked. Yeah, it did, right? So it created this other file here called node modules. Now we already had it, and I've been pretty, religious about making sure you guys do this, but it's not a bad thing to have. I mean, if you have multiple gitignores, it's not going to break anything. That's totally fine. Great. We're off to a great start. We're doing this. And now we also want to add in the following lines. So cool. In that gitignore, I need to, and this is why we still do this gitignore, is I also need to add in this other information: coverage, build, dstore, and .env. .env is going to be like your environment variable. So if you have any passwords, if you have anything like that, that's where .env, and there's other different aspects. Cool. Next, we'll need to remove any Git repositories that already exist within our client folder. So when we run this command, we'll add it. It shouldn't be one. Change directory into your project folder, into the client, and remove the hidden. So we shouldn't have this .gitignore, but we can still run this. Let's just to make sure, right? I'm going to just do it as I would if I was building. So let's go to let's CD into client. Great. And then it wants us to remove this git. So I'm just going to copy this. Might say no file. Okay. Doesn't say anything. That's fine. And then we're going to remove our gitignore, which is fine because we already created a new gitignore, right? Cool. Great. Now we need to initialize. I've already done this. All of our code, ignoring, create a commit. I've already done this. And I've already done this part where you want to then create. So we're going to CD back to here. Now remember, mine's in the parent, but I would initialize this if I hadn't already pushed this code.
Someone asked, does the gitignore should be there to ignore the node modules for the client?
I don't believe so, because we've already hidden, or we've already done that with this guy. We're going to go step by step. I did this step by step, and this worked perfectly. Into the project folder, into the client, and remove the hidden git or gitignore. Okay. If I've already initialized, we go back to our project folder, we init, we add, we commit. Cool. We've done this a couple times. We type the name of our new thing. Cool. So this one, if you're following this, this is just naming this MERN deployment. So anytime you see this, you would just replace it with your actual repository name. So if we go to GitHub, let's just go to GitHub real fast. Just walk through real fast how we would do that. Just as a reminder, if we come here, yep, I would do a repository name. Just like it says, we'd create that. we can leave this unchecked because we don't need a README. And then we can make it private. This doesn't require it to be public. So for right now, we're good to go. You do want to make it private though, because that way I can, and you're going to have to add me as a collaborator. Cool. We'll look at that here in a second. Like if I have some code, let's say that I go to this guy. Go to this one. So I could add in settings. I believe it's settings. And then we've got collaborators. And you're going to, oh. I'm going to have to confirm access, but you would just confirm, you would just do that. And then you would add me as a collaborator. If it is, since it's going to be private.
Would it be worthwhile to submit this as private since it'll require going over how to use tokens? Because the instructions don't go into that.
Yeah. Let me. Oh, sorry, my monitor just died. Give me 1 second. Because what I'm thinking is maybe I'll just create one outside of this. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm sorry, guys. Because I'm already in this MERN. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to say KCD. So I'm actually just going to create a new one and we're going to act like it's brand new. So MKCD, we're going to say MERN deployment test. MERN deployment test. Perfect. I'm going to first init. Cool. So I initialize that. Remember, we want to do that before we do anything. And then I'm going to say npx create React app client. Ten, yeah, you definitely want to remove node modules before you zip the file. You definitely need to remove your node modules. Okay. And then set my client and I'm going to say mkcd server. Then I'm going to say mkdir controllers, models, routes, and config. Touch server.js. This is creating a server.js. I'm just trying to emulate this. Cool. I don't think I have to configure my database, but I am going to need to npm in my server, npm init -y. We've seen that we needed to do that. And then I'm going to say npm install express. Also need cores. And
Mongoose.
Mongoose, thank you. And then
Should we
X.
include Node.ngn?
Oh, include which one? I'm sorry.
Node.ngn for
Oh.
the grading side of things.
Oh, I don't think so. I think we'll just do these.
I know
guys.
the platform has us install it globally, but
Oh, NodeMon.
NodeMon, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's already installed globally. So that's just to run it. So you should be good. I'm just trying to think of everything because what this is going to do is we are going to let's go ahead and code this. Take this away.
You'll need to
Hey, guys.
do Axios and client as well.
Yeah.
And
So I'm going to code this. The whole reason I am installing all of these things is because Man, I wish I wouldn't have put that in the parent folder. So that way we could walk through it. The reason I am installing all these things is because we need a package JSON. Because what we're going to do is when we go in, we're going to say, okay, get our dependencies, do what we need. And so we also have these node modules as well. Okay, so let's go to our client. CD to client, and then we're going to npm install Axios. What else are we installing?
React router DOM.
Yeah, React router DOM.
And Bootstrap if you're not doing the CDN.
Oh, I'll just do the CDN. That's fine. Or I'm not actually going to build out anything. So, okay. So since I've already initialized this, let's go ahead and just build it out. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to do this guy. Sorry about this, friends. So I'm going to say echo node modules, get ignore. Perfect. Cool. Need to add in this guy. Perfect. So I'm going to run into my client. So CD to client. Just following this, we're going to remove our get. I'm going to ignore. And with you, Alan, that is kind of unique, but I walked through this process before this class started, not this class, but the whole thing. And this worked exactly how we should. So, okay. So since I've already initted, so I'm going to CD back and then I'm just gonna clear this for you. I'm going to say, git add space dot, right? I want to add everything to my repo. If I want to, I can say status. Cool. It shows that I added all these new files. It's always a good indication that you added something. Git commit -m. So I'm going to say, what's the word I'm looking for? Deployment example. Sample. So I do git commit -m deployment example. Perfect. Now let's go to GitHub. And I'm going to come back. Let's create a new one. We'll just call this MERN deployment. That's me. Cool. I'm going to make this private. I don't need a README. Git ignore template. No, we're chilling because we just created that. And let's create this repository. Okay. So let's follow this. We've added this. We've created this entire thing. We have this guy. So now I just need to push my code. So I'm going to come back here and say, let's remote add origin. So come here. This is the one I definitely like to copy and paste because if you mess up and you set a different origin, it can get very confusing. Git branch in. And git push -u origin main. Cool. So now I pushed it. So if I come here and I refresh, shall at least see this. Cool. So we have our git ignore, we have our client, and we have our server. Perfect. Okay. Now let's see if this works. Which we done this. Cool. Project is on GitHub. So now I first need to, so that should be basic, right? You guys should have already seen that. We've already talked about GitHub a million times. So what we need to do is now set up our server instance. So we get logged in, go to the EC2 dashboard and click on instances. So let's do that. I'm going to come to this EC2. Now mine already showed up, but we come here. And then what it says to do is we are going to click on instances to create the new instance, set launch instances button in the upper right portion. Now, just know that AWS changes all the time. So if you don't see it in the upper right, so I don't see it in the upper right, but I do see a launch instance right here. You can infer that that's fine. The real reason is if we, Amazon changes like literally quarterly how their setup is. They're always doing stuff. They're always changing it up. So see, this is the new EC2 instance. Let's see if there's the old one. Looks the exact same in my opinion, but alas, here we are. Cool. So we're going to go to launch instance. Okay. So here's my instance. So and EC2 is Elastic Cloud Computing. Really, it's just a server that Amazon has that allows us to put our code. And it's basically, you can kind of think about it just like somebody else's computer that's hosting our code in the same way that we have our local hosting, right? We have our NPM or we have our like server and our client hosted on our computer. It's just doing the same thing on another computer somewhere else. And that's really the cloud. It's just kind of using somebody else's computer, which is kind of funny. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is to choose your server, AKA Amazon machine image. We'll first have to select our AMI, which is Ubuntu. So there's a bunch of different types you can do. So Linux, Mac OS, you can basically get any sort of operating system. We're going to click Ubuntu. Great. Please see the screenshot below and choosing the correct square image and OS. This is the operating system on our server. There's one more step after you choose this to get the correct version. So please do not move forward. Again, this is where you have to read everything. So we choose the Ubuntu, which, and then we want to choose the 20.04. So I come here and I see 22, that's free tier eligible, but let's go to 20.04 just because this is how we have everything set up. And so when things change, we cannot use this because it doesn't support MongoDB, right? 22.04 doesn't support MongoDB. So we use 20.04. Great. So we click that. That is good to go. I followed that picture. I've selected it. As you saw, this is free tier eligible, meaning that it's free unless you hit a certain width, but you are good to go. So we go and we click there. So let's go see. So we are good to go. That just closed this. Like if I come here and I close this, that just closes that. So you can also click out. So if I like come here and I looks like maybe the new version automatically does that, but we're at 20.04. Perfect. So now the next thing we need to do is select our instance type, which is T2 micro. So that's the largest one. So it's just the type of kind of the capacity of what computer that you're using. So if I come down here, we have this T2 micro. You can see that there's a ton of different options. All of these will cost more money, but you can see now you have a 16 gigabytes of memory, a different CPU. If you had really extensive stuff, you can do that. And you can see the different pricing per hour of using this. Like this is 50 cents an hour if you're using Windows and using this T3 large. So we're just going to do the T2 micro. It's also free. This is the biggest one that is free, but you can see that, it can cost you a little bit if you leave it up and running and just forget about it. So make sure that once this is done, you do shut down your instance. So we need to configure a key pair. This will allow us to connect as an admin. This will be important. So please make sure you don't share it. I'm going to show it now, but I'm going to take this down immediately so you can't hack me or anything. You never want to upload this to a GitHub repo or put it in a public place on the internet. This is literally a key to access of our instance. So please store these in a better way, local folder somewhere, or if you have a different tool like, password manager that can take documents or something like it, somewhere that it is going to be super safe. So let's go ahead. We're going to call it my super secret key pair. So let's go to it. So now I'm going to call this. I think I already made one, but I'm going to just make one. I'm going to create a new one. Ooh. I'll just do my super duper secret key pair. Cool. Now we can see there's different types. We want to use this open SSH. PuTTY's like for a way that you can remote in, but it's really for Windows. So we want to use this PIM and RSA. So next we want to configure our security group. We want to limit the amount of computers that can access through SSH. Wow, that is 2 bad typos. So it's recommended that you set your SSH traffic to my IP because SSH is when we are going to go in and add on the code. And so please make sure, that's why it says my IP. That doesn't mean that I can't see it, but when we're handling who can SSH and actually change it, you want to do wherever you're currently at. So let's do this. We create our key pair. Cool. It downloads right there. I'm going to put this on my desktop for right now. Cool. So allow SSH traffic from my IP. Perfect. And then we also want to do this guy right here. Let's see. Actually, am I going ahead? Yeah. So we want HTTPS and HTTP. So we want to enable. So that is basically by doing this SSH, what you're doing is you're saying, I only want if I am or somebody on my IP address can change the code, but I want to allow people from anywhere on the internet using HTTP or HTTPS to make requests to my server, right? So this is giving me access, or really anybody. You can show your friends after if you want, like, hey, look what I created. This is really cool. It's hosted on AWS. You can do all that, which is kind of cool. But if you don't have these clicked, then you can't do that. Cool. So now we want to configure storage, make sure we stay in the free tier eligible. So let's go do that.
Just a question. Well, I'm not sure. Do you use a VPN?
I don't, but
Okay.
if you do, that is something to be aware of.
Yes. So those who use a VPN, I think you either have to A, turn it off, or B, I think it has to switch that to like 0.01, like all IPs. If you run into that error, you'll find out. But if you use it, just be mindful of it. So
Yeah,
plug it.
That's a great point. If you are using a VPN, which means that if you know, a VPN is basically I can change my IP address and say that I live in England or wherever. It's just a protection thing. I do have one. I don't have it up and running now, but your IP address might change if you do that. So please make sure that I would just say, get rid of that, like turn it off for a while and then allow traffic. Once you SSH in and out, you're good to go. And then you can turn it back on later if you want. Cool. So we are good to go. Let's follow this. Free tier eligible. So now this should be good to go. Yeah. Free tier eligible customers can get this. Yeah. Cool. So now I'm going to launch my instance. So now somewhere this is created. Perfect. So my instance is now launched, meaning that somewhere I've got some space that I can now, none of my code's obviously connected or anything like that, but I've got some space of things that I can do. Great. And then we can return back to our dashboard. So let's go back to EC2. Cool. Great. Cool. So after clicking on launch instances, you'll see a message showing your launch status. Click on view instances to see your instance's web page quickly shows as running. So sometimes this does take a little bit for us to have up and running. So if I come to this instance here, here was the first one that I did, but we can see that this one is up and running, right? I guess so I'm gonna say MERN deployment example. Oh my goodness. What a cluster. Slow, smooth, and smooth is fast. Okay. So you can see that this is up and running. That's good. That means our instance is good to go. Again, whenever you want to change it, this is what you can change and do instant state. Whenever you want to stop it, you can stop it here. Make sure it's clicked. So after I've graded it, you're good to go. Cool. So we see that, see our name. We can edit the button and give it a name to make it easy to identify. We just did that. Select your instance and click the connect button. A new page will show you the SSH, the secure shell connection information that's specific to your instance. Do not copy from this page. So I want to click on this and I've already highlighted this. I'm going to say connect. Cool. We're good to go here. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to, so let's see. do not copy from this page. We have all this information in your terminal. CD into the directory that contains your PIM key. So right now I've got, so once there, run the commands in the modal on the EC2 dashboard. This is a modal, right? This pop-up. The first command will properly set your permissions key for a key name keyname.pim. The second will SSH into your instance server. Okay. It says do not copy from this image. Oh, from this image. Okay. So sorry, I was like, what the heck? So right now my super duper security is on, I don't know what my main, hold on, let me find it. My super duper security is on my dashboard. And so I'm going to just move this into somewhere different. CD instruction. Oops, let's do this out. Okay. So now in here, I've got this coding dojo. I've got my super secret security key pair. So now let's go run this code. So we are going to, we have this information. So we first need to, in your terminal, cd into the directory that contains your PIM key. So mine is coding dojo. So I'm going to cd back. Okay, perfect. This is my directory. Once there, run the commands from the modal in the EC2 instance. So what that means is we're going to take this, I'm going to run this command. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to run this. No such file, my super duper. Oh. Whoops. That was my old one. Just come here. There we go. Híjole. Okay, now I've got the correct one, so I can come back up to my terminal. That has now gone out. Okay. See, these are some of the things that you might run into, friends. So give yourself plenty of time. Okay. Okay. Now it is in there. Let's go ahead and run that again. So I'm gonna come here. Cool. So because I didn't get that error, that tells me everything is good to go. Now I need to SSH in. Or sorry, connect your instance. See, that's what happens. We got to make sure we are very, very, very safe. And we are not jumping ahead or doing anything crazy. So, yeah, so actually we do use a SSH. Just come here. And this is going to be unique. So again, that's why it's saying do not copy from this image. You want to make sure you get your own because these are all unique. So then I come here, I run that. Can't be established. Now let's come here.
Are you able to zoom in on your terminal a bit?
Oh yeah, sorry. Cool. So it says the key is not known by any other names. Are you sure you want to connect? You want to continue connecting. So if we look at the platform, it says that you're going to be prompted that can't be. Do you want to do what do you want to do? It says to do yes. So we anticipate that. So I'm going to say yes. Cool. So now I'm in. So that now that it says Ubuntu, I'm in that computer that I have reserved for AWS in the same way that I was CDing back and forth on my own computer. Now I'm actually in that one, which is kind of cool. We're now in another computer. So let's go see what it says to do. Great. You should now be connected to your server instance. We are. That's great. Getting our code onto this. A few steps we need to take to initially get everything set up. Let's run this guy. This is a fresh server, so we do need to make sure everything is up and running. We need to add in all the things that we need to add in, all the different packages. Okay, we need to add in Node as well. Cool. So once that's done, 40 packages can be upgraded. Now we just run here. Is getting our server to have everything that we're going to need in order for us to run this. It's going to take a little bit. I'm going to come here. These commands will make sure that your server has up-to-date software, then install Node, Node Package Manager, Nginx, and Git. The Y answers yes to the prompt if you want to install all this software. You see, it's still going. It's doing a whole bunch of stuff.
While it's going, I do have a question. When, say for students, you know, maybe they messed up the deployment, or maybe they had to stop mid deployment with it. Are they supposed to start over by? Do they start over by like the last step they were in, or?
So you'll have
Yeah.
to, yeah, you'll have to. So it's the same way of like if your computer, you stop mid creation or doing something, you know, there, you'll have to SSH back into your server.
Okay,
And
so that'll be the new starting point is in the SSH in that server.
yeah, you need to SSH into it, get on the computer, and then you can keep forward because your server should still, like right now, let's say something happened, our power goes out, right? Well, we've already done all this other stuff, so we don't need to go re-download Node, and we don't need to go re-download all these other things. It's already there. It's living on that. So we just have to SSH into that, and then we can pick up where we left off.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Cool. So we've done that. Now it says by default, we'll be getting version 8.1.0 when we install Node.js. Want to get a more recent version. To overcome this, we install a PPA, Personal Package Archive, allow us to get a newer version. So we're going to run Node.js-v 10.19.0, which is exactly. So we're going to say curl. And we're going to grab this new version. We're up to date. Cool. If you see that nothing happened, that's usually a good sign. It'll give an error if something did not work. So just keep that in mind. So we're just going to follow this slowly. Cool. Then we're going to apt-get install. Let's come here. Again, go slow. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It is much easier to do this in 40 minutes versus 30, but it's much easier to do this at a pace of 40 minutes and then not have any errors because you took your time versus trying to rush and get it done in like 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden you get into errors and now you're trying to debug. And especially if you've not done anything in the cloud, then all of a sudden you're going to be like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Right. So cool. So now we see that our version is now 18.15. That's good to go. 14.7 or newer. And then we're going to do the last thing. Obviously, you don't need to do anything with the hashtag with a number sign. Cool. Good to go. Now that we have installed Nginx and our software or server software, we should be able to navigate our browser to our server's public IP address and see the Nginx that. So when I'm looking at my instance, I'm just going to, yeah, don't need that anymore. Cool. So when I'm looking at this instance ID, so if I click on this, it gives me all my information, right? I have my private. This is going to stay the same always, but here is my new public IP address. This is where things are going to look. If you see this, sometimes it's if you have an HTTPS, though we allowed it here, you just have to take it to HTTP. We welcome to Nginx. Cool. We're good to go. We are doing this correctly. We're able to see, we're staying step by step. We're not skipping steps. We're able to see the Nginx splash screen. So that's great. And this says it too right here. If you did not, either you didn't install it in the previous step or your URL, try doing this first. Versus, you know, trying to go back, just take off the S and see if that worked. Cool. So it is in HTTP. Cool. Now that we have installed Git, we can use it to clone our repository that we did in the first step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm in my Ubuntu, right? What I then want to do is I want to go to my actual GitHub. I can go to this. I click on this code, right? And then this is going to be my different ways I can clone it. So I'm just going to use this guy. So I'm just going to copy this. And then just make sure that's what we're doing. Yep, we're cloning. It should say basically GitHub, your GitHub name, MERN. I called it MERN deployment. So here, but we need, before we just copy that, I do have to say git clone. So don't just copy it and go from there. Git clone. So now what I'm doing is I'm going and grabbing that information. So username, ooh, my password. That's a wonderful question. I don't know the last time I had a.
And it should be your token.
Yeah, that should be a token.
It always says password, but it's looking for the token.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So if you do put your password, then it's going to give you this error. Just did want to show this, that it did change to a token. And so it says, please see this guy if you're wanting to, getting started with remote URLs for information currently. So let's go look at that. So let's come here. And then we can see all of this information that we've got a Git credential manager. So password-based authentication has been removed for a favor of more secure. So creating a personal access token. So now let's go find our access token. It's been a while since I've done this. Where is it at?
Settings, and then
Settings,
developer settings at the bottom.
passwords and authentication.
No,
Far left,
Oh,
at the
all the way
bottom.
at the bottom.
Yeah, developer settings. The very bottom, yeah. And then personalized access tokens. And then the classic.
Classic, yeah.
yeah. Ooh,
And generate new token.
cool.
Right.
Yeah, so let's do that. Let's just generate a new token, find grained repo scoped. Nope, general use. Let's do this. Sorry, I gotta do this. Stupid verification code.
And those who are doing this, you have to make sure you save your access token. Once you see it, you cannot get it back. So put that in a private file, you know, a text file, whatever. It will not allow you to use it. Once you see it there, it will not appear again. Just for those who are doing this.
Cool. Let's see that what we can give it access to certain things. I'm gonna give it full control of private repos. You definitely want to do that. Let's see, upload packages. What else do we need?
Yes, Ellen makes a good point. You can regenerate a new one just in case you're like, oh man, I forgot to copy and paste it somewhere. You can do a new one.
Mm-hmm.
And for cloning, you should only need repo.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't really need access to. Cool. So let's generate our token. You guys are going to get to see it, but that's okay. So here is this token. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to save mine. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to save it somewhere. Cool. So here's my token. Yes, just like Grace said, if I do this, you can never see it again. So you do need to save that. So let's go back. Let's run that code again. I'm going to say Cody Calhoun. So that's my GitHub name. Token. Cool. It doesn't look like I did anything, but that's because it's the token. Cool. So we're able to get it. Grab that information. I don't know why that keeps moving. Great. Let's keep going. We've cloned. Next, we need to make the following commands more copy pastable. We'll export a variable on our server. So we're going to call it this. So this is, instead of having this whole entire repository thing, we can just say export. We created that variable of repo name. Perfect. After exporting the variable, we can check to see that it was set by echoing it. Echo will print out the variable. So let's just copy this.
And the repo name should be your repo name. Like,
Yeah.
Because you happen to name it MERN deployment, but
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Alan. This guy should be a match. Cool. And we see MERN deployment. Cool. So now we need to set up our front end. So we've got all of our code and stuff set up, but now we need to set up our front end. So we just can run this, but just know that repo name. So this gets kind of confusing for people because we created repo name. That way we don't have to keep saying MERN deployment. This is good to go. Yeah. So this is good to go. So you don't need to like then refill your repo name here because we created the variable of repo name. That makes sense. So let's just go here. Cool. So we're seeding into that. npm install. Now this is going to take our package JSON and install everything we need.
and just to mention, the repo name, the variable that you create is temporary. So if your SSH connection closes out or you get interrupted, you will have to do that again
Create that
in order
create that.
to keep using the code.
Good point.
Cool. So once that's done, we can say npm run build. This one. Cool. We're going to run this guy. Again, it is just a lot of going through the motions. Cool. So now if we navigate to our browser, to our IP address, we should see the front end of our project. Now, remember that for us is just a React app. So we just like normal, but we're able to see this is our React app that we created on our actual IP address. So if I had, you know, our other project, we would be able to see that information. Cool. Okay. So yeah, because we used to say localhost 8000, that's going to be different. So we can fix those links by doing this guy. Please change. So to fix the links, we would essentially need to go into our build folder, change all routes that look like this into routes that start with this guy. So that way we could, while we could fire up Zim and do that, or Vim, we could just do that instead with the power of bash command. So I'm gonna take this entire thing. Just doing the same thing. I don't have that actually technically, because I didn't build out anything, but if that was, it says no input files because I don't have any sort of routes or anything like that. Oops. Cool. Just manual grep, setting up our back end. So I'm a little bit stressed because I didn't set up a back end really. So I don't have anything to run on a port or anything like that. Yeah. So this isn't actually going to work. So here's what I'll do. I'm sorry for those of you that are still here. I will make a video tomorrow. I will find an actual project. We're already 30 minutes over. Find an actual project and I'll throw out how I would build this and do this, because this isn't going to work because I don't have anything in my code and then I have to push everything and grab it all again and do it all again. So, yeah, I will make a video tomorrow on deployment and send it out to you guys. I'm sorry about this. But now that I'm looking at it, because we don't have any route set up and we don't even have a server set up in the back end. We can't even test if it works. I should have thought about that. But yeah, I will set up and I'll send out a video tomorrow for you guys on how to deploy. I'll just deploy another project. I'll pull out another project or build something real quick. Because yeah, it's not gonna work because I don't even have a back end. So didn't think about that. I'm gonna stop the recording here because nothing more.